Hey everyone, welcome back to the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Bobby Sylvester, joined as always by Mike Tagliere. You can follow us on Twitter at BobbyFantasyPro and at Mike Tagliere NFL. Tags, how's it going, man?
It's going, dude. And I, you know, you just mentioned it, and I've been meaning to say it on the podcast forever because I know there's people out there that listen to podcasts that might not be on Twitter. If you guys don't have a Twitter account, and you're playing fantasy football, I believe you're at a serious disadvantage. Bobby and I will tweet out things here and there, basically giving you little tidbits that might not be in an article, like you like finding about the inactives, finding out about things like Chris Carson. If you were on Twitter, you would have found out that Chris Carson was inactive last week. I tell people this all the time. Twitter is one of the most underutilized things in fantasy football. If you're listening to this right now and you don't have a Twitter account, make one. Don't invite your friends. I don't use mine for my friends. I use it strictly for football. And you do it as a news source. You follow the people that you want to. It's a great way to do it.
You don't have to have politics shoved down your throat either. Like Tags and I at least don't talk about politics. So we're just all fantasy sports. I do some baseball as well. So sorry if you're not a baseball guy. But we give a lot of cool stuff on Twitter and we're on it all the time. I also want to say thanks to everyone for leaving these reviews that we've been getting, Tags. I don't know about you, but I read every single one of them. And it's seriously like when I need a break during my day and just like a lift me up, I go read those. And yeah, there's some constructive criticism in there, which helps the show. It's helped us a lot. But when I read these things, man, they just make me happy. And we haven't been able to respond to everyone. There's just so many of them. But thank you so much for taking the time to leave those reviews.
Absolutely. It's like, seriously, that's the one thing that we can ask of you guys. And you guys have killed it. And now we're giving away jerseys because of it, Bobby.
That's right. We're giving away a signed Michael Thomas jersey from Pristine Auction. This thing is awesome. You can go to fantasypros.com/jersey giveaway. It takes like 30 seconds to enter. Again, that's fantasypros.com/jersey-giveaway. Tags, we do have some news to talk about, and then we're going to have Chris Harris on as a guest to talk about quarterback start sit, running back start sit. Then we'll close it out talking wide receiver and tight ends. But first, Leonard Fournette has already been ruled out for Week 5. This makes TJ Yeldon a must-start, right?
Yeah. Like, whenever Fournette's out, you have to play TJ Yeldon. The way he's using the passing game, he's game script proof. So even if you're worried about the Chiefs scoring points in the Jaguars defense, it doesn't matter because that means he's going to be utilized in the passing game. Corey Grant already had his opportunity. He blew it. And TJ Yeldon is healthy. I have him as a top 15 play this week.
The other big news, Tags, is that Le'Veon Bell says he's coming back.
This is nuts. I don't know what the heck is happening. Part of me wonders if this is if it's all hearsay, right? And it's not hearsay, but
I mean, we heard he was coming back the Saturday before the season, right? Is this kind of thing maybe?
We heard that too, but I think this could be that Le'Veon Bell. So basically, the Steelers, we heard that they were actively shopping them. It started out that they were taking offers, like if anybody wanted to come with an offer. Then they were actively shopping them, and all of a sudden, Le'Veon Bell said he's going to return after the bye week. So, I mean, is this a way to trade him to another team? Like if Le'Veon's willing to report, for week 8 to start playing week 8, then it's more enticing to a team to trade for him. Because my idea was that if Le'Veon Bell was traded, even if the Steelers found a trade partner, what does Le'Veon Bell have with the new team that he doesn't have with Pittsburgh? He still doesn't have the guarantees. He still can't sign a brand new deal. He's still under the franchise tag, making the same amount of money. He's still putting himself at the same risk. So none of it made any sense to me. So I wonder if this is like a way to help his trade value. They're like, hey, maybe Pittsburgh reached out to Le'Veon's agent and said, hey, if he wants to play football, whatever, we want to trade him, but we have to have him say that he's willing to play for another team or whatever.
That was my thought too. I think that this is him getting traded. I don't know where it's going to happen. I'd love to see Houston, Tampa, maybe Indianapolis. I don't know if they trade him to another AFC team. The best fit would be the Ravens. Of course, that's not going to happen, but the Ravens could sure use him, couldn't they?
Yeah, they could. The Eagles are another team that could look into it because, the thing is, if some team is going to trade for Le'Veon Bell, it's going to be a contender. That's why the Colts are not in it for me because the Colts are never going to win a Super Bowl this year. You have to look at a team who's going to be a contender because you have them essentially on a rent-a-deal. You cannot negotiate a new contract. Can there be under-the-table stuff? Sure, but that's not what Le'Veon Bell's looking at. He's legitimately wanting to protect himself to make as much money as he can in the offseason. So
as he should.
Yeah, and I can't disagree with him. Do I think that he's asking for more than he's probably worth? Probably, but that's up to him. That's his body. Who is anybody to question that? If he's not playing football, he's not playing. It hurts our fantasy teams, and that really sucks.
Well, Dez Bryant did the same thing and didn't work out for him. You just got to take what you can get, man.
Oh, yeah, and that's another piece of news, Bobby, is that Dez Bryant, did you see that? Dez Bryant tweeted yesterday, and I found it very interesting because someone said, what team are you going to go to? He said that my first choice would be the Cowboys, but after that, we'll see soon.
Didn't he just say like a month ago he would go to any team except the Cowboys?
I think that Dez Bryant's out of options, and I think this is the best case scenario for Dez Bryant, and especially if you're holding him in a dynasty league or you've been holding him on your bench, like hoping that he returns. Because if he goes to a team that's non-Cowboys, he's going to have issues because he doesn't know the playbook. He doesn't know the quarterback. There's no trust there between the two. If he goes back to Dallas,
maybe he plays there for 8 weeks. He can buy himself, get himself a contract.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like, he knows the offense. He knows Dak. They know Dak's struggling. The team is playing better than most people thought it would. I mean, through 4 weeks, Dallas is 2-2. They're still in the playoff hunt.
So would you drop someone like Kenny Stills, Chris Hogan to pick up Dez Bryant?
I would not.
I wouldn't either. The only reason I asked is because a lot of people are going to ask that. And a lot of people have been asking me about Le'Veon Bell. Do I trade him for David Johnson? Do I trade him straight up for Mark Ingram? Where do you have him rest of the season based on the news we've heard, Tex?
I would take both those running backs for Le'Veon Bell right now.
I would take Le'Veon Bell for both those running backs right now.
I would prefer to have one of those other running backs. I'd prefer Mark Ingram or David Johnson.
Not in an expert league. In an expert league, I would not do that because I don't know I'm going to make the playoffs in an expert league. In my home league, yeah, I'm going to make the playoffs. And if you're going to make your playoffs, you want Le'Veon Bell, trust me, over those guys.
Yeah, I mean, if you're sitting there at like 4-0 and you could afford to do that, yeah, I'd probably do that because I don't see, like, Le'Veon's not going to sit out the whole season because it would affect things with his franchise tag and how that all works. Yeah, I mean, if you're in a situation like that, I guess I would consider it, but I still think I have Mark Ingram as a top 10 running back the rest of the year.
Yeah, I've got him number 12. I'm right there with you. He's up there for sure. And let's remember, he was a top 5 running back for most of the season last year.
Oh, yeah.
By the way, we get so many questions, and this isn't like to boast or anything like that. The reason I'm saying it is because we can't answer them all. And I feel like a jerk because of it. I wish I could answer every single question. There's just not enough time in the day. I love my family, and I have to spend some time with them. We have a lot of other stuff going on. Guys, you can get 95% of your questions answered by just looking at our rankings. Tags and I post our rest of the season rankings every single week. We update them throughout the week. We post our weekly rankings every week, update them throughout the week every couple hours. If you've got start-sit questions or trade questions 1-for-1, or who should I drop, who should I pick up, all those questions can be answered with our rankings. We've got them for super flex leagues, normal flex leagues, PPR, half PPR, standard, whatever. We've got all your questions answered, so please just look at our rankings, guys.
Yeah, I wish that I had more time in a day. I tell my bosses that all the time. I'm just like, I wish I had more time in a day to talk to everybody because I used to try and respond to every single person that messages me on Twitter, but that's what led me to do the primer. The primer is a way for me to answer everyone's question without taking myself away from work. Basically, I talk, and if you guys haven't read the primer yet, it's an article that goes up every single Thursday morning on the website where I talk about every single fantasy relevant player from every game. Like, legitimately, you will have a paragraph, if not more, on every single player, and those are my thoughts. And if I don't answer it there, I'm probably not going to be able to answer it on Twitter. So I definitely encourage you guys to check that out. Check out the articles that we release. And again, it goes back to Twitter. We post all of our articles, our rankings, all that stuff on Twitter.
All right, Tags, 2 more quick pieces of news. T.Y. Hilton, I don't think he's going to play Thursday night against the Patriots. Obviously, Andrew Luck's going to get his. So Ryan Grant, I think he becomes a must-start, right?
Ryan Grant is like a high floor play. He's like that guy, like
maybe Chester Rogers too.
Chester Rogers, I mean, I don't like Chester Rogers very much, but I mean, he probably has the best matchup of the receivers on the Colts. I mean, it's not great. And I honestly worry a little bit about Andrew Luck this week. And I know you were saying that he'll get his, but I mean, if you look at New England when they've played at home, they've been better. I mean, they held Deshaun Watson to 176 yards, 1 touchdown. Last week, Ryan Tannehill, a lot of people thought he was going to be streamer worthy. He threw for 100 yards on 20 passes. Like, teams have struggled in New England. Now, New England's played like crap on the road. But, in a primetime game in New England, I don't know. I mean, I have Ryan Grant as like a wide receiver 4 this week. I don't think he comes with massive upside, but I think if you're like in a bye week dilemma and you're looking for someone, I think he could provide you with a solid floor.
And then Rob Gronkowski, I don't think he's playing this week either. This obviously boosts everyone in that pass offense besides Gronk, because there's targets that are going to be spread around otherwise. But his backup tight end, is he someone that you could stream?
We've been down this road with Dwayne Allen before. Like, I remember there was 1 week Gronk was out. Everybody wanted to play Dwayne Allen. Everybody ranked him as a top 5 option. He was played in every DFS lineup, and it just didn't work out.
And the next week he came back and nobody played Dwayne Allen, and he scored like 3 touchdowns. Remember that?
Yeah, I remember Martellus Bennett did that back in the day, and it was just like...
Oh, was it Bennett? Okay.
I think it was Bennett, but yeah, I definitely see where you're going with that, and that's the thing. It's just like Dwayne Allen he's just a guy. Like, ever since he's left Indianapolis, he hasn't done much, and he played over half the snaps last week, and he didn't do anything, so I'm not looking into doing it. Unless you're in like a 2 tight end league, then you can consider him.
All right, guys, we're going to get to our guest, Chris Harris, here in just a second and start talking start sit. But first, I want to remind you all, we've got a DFS show that we do every single week. If you're not a DFS player, you can check it out, get involved on FanDuel, submit a lineup. Even if you just do a free lineup, get in there and see what it's about because it is so much fun. There's so much strategy in it. And the contest I'm really excited about right now is the World Fantasy Football Championship. They do this live final where everybody who qualifies, like if you win a satellite is you have to beat 1,000 people. If you're the number 1 lineup, then you move on to the live final. And there's $2 million worth of prizes in this live final. Top prize is $500,000. And so they fly you out to this big old party, and you watch the game, you get sportsbook credit, everything like that, and you stay at a really nice hotel. It is just an awesome experience. I want to be a part of it, and FanDuel has all kinds of things like this going on. So if you haven't checked out FanDuel, see what they have for you. It's a really cool site. Our guest today is Chris Harris of HarrisFootball.com and the Harris Football Podcast. Chris, thanks for taking the time to talk today.
Hey guys, what's going on? Thanks for having me back.
It's our pleasure, Chris, as always. And you've been doing these daily film breakdowns. These things are great, man.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, YouTube channel. I figured it had been long enough. I was at ESPN for 8 years, and I did TV, and I just...
Yeah.
Not having my face on things was really upsetting to me, so... The ego, it's like, dude, I mean, I realize that it's going to be ridiculously hard to make a 10-minute show 4 days a week, but it's more important that your ego get fed and your stupid face be places, so you definitely do that.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm personally enjoying it myself. So even if you're just doing it for me, keep them coming. I like it. What is your YouTube channel?
Yeah, youtube.com/HarrisFootball. Basically, I'm on the actual video very little. It's me like, hello, I'm Chris. And then we go into, it's just breaking down game film. That's it. It's like I did yesterday, Sony Michel and Kenny Galladay. Just did like 5 minutes of Sony Michel plays, talking about what's good and what's maybe not decipherable yet, and then showing Kenny Galladay plays. Like, oh my God, this guy. If you're just looking at the box score, I don't think it's doing a good enough job communicating how good Kenny Galladay is and how I'm starting to think he's AJ Green. Like he is special.
Tags and I were talking about that just last week, just how special Kenny Galladay is. Tags, what did you think about Sony Michel going through and watching his game? I wasn't super impressed.
I mean, I don't think he needed to do a whole lot. Like, it wasn't like a game where he made Saquon Barkley type plays, but he did what he was asked, and he needed to get downhill. And I think it was a good confidence builder for him because watching him, play against the Lions, he was very timid behind the line of scrimmage, and it was almost like he was playing like not to lose yards rather than gain them. It was just a really weird way to see him play after watching him in Georgia for those years. So I didn't walk away like incredibly impressed with Michel because I'm a huge fan. I've been a fan since Georgia, but I still think that there's more with him to his game, and I think that he's obviously going to be on Thursday night this week, so we're going to be able to see him. Everybody, the whole world's going to see him. I have him ranked this week as a borderline RB1, so I'm not down too low on him.
I was hoping for more. I'm wondering if, how they're going to use him on Thursday night after the short rest and everything, because you never know what Belichick's going to do. Anyway, we will get into that. We've got, like I mentioned, a start-sit show. We're going to start out at the quarterback position. We're going to talk about QBs and running backs with Chris, and then Tags and I will do wide receivers, tight ends, and defense special teams. So, of course, this depends on, what your lineup composition is. Obviously, if you've got, Patrick Mahomes and Big Ben, it's a lot different than if you've got Jared Goff and Andy Dalton. And so a lot of this just depends on your team. With that said, we're going to be talking about guys who are on the fringe, guys like quarterbacks ranked 8 through 15 in ECR right now, and just give our general takes on them. You can decide what you want to do with it, if you want to start them or sit them based on that. But just in general, we will start with Patrick Mahomes face Jacksonville. It's a home game. Chris, how do you feel about him this week? Is he in your top 12 quarterbacks?
He's number 9, and it's a kind of a cop-out rank. I mean, he was...
That's where I've got him, too.
He was great. I mean, he was great, right? It's the first of the 4 games in which he produced fantasy points like a human being and not a robot, and yet it was the one where most was asked of him, and he rose to the challenge. And I mean, Jacksonville's an incredibly terrible matchup. Of course it is. But if I've been riding him, I think the temptation is just to ride him. You're obviously assuming a ton of risk. I don't know what's going to happen. So what's Jacksonville going to do? I mean, essentially, they're going to play the single safety high. They're going to man up like hell on the outside. They're going to double Tyreek Hill because everybody has to double Tyreek Hill. But, they're going to try to be more physical than Denver was against Mahomes' receivers and then put pressure on him. And it's going to be more difficult. I mean, the idea that there's a 5-touchdown game lurking is probably wrong.
I agree. Tags, I mean, I know a lot of people don't believe this because of how I've ranked Mahomes the past 2 weeks, but I like Mahomes. He's obviously a very good quarterback. My concerns with him is that he's 10th or 11th in the league in passing right now. Going into last week, he was on pace to throw fewer than 500 passes on the season, and he threw a lot more last week because they were down. I don't think that happens in Jacksonville, though. So do you have him in your top 12?
I don't. I mean, I haven't run the borderline. I have him at 13 right now, and the reason I have him there is because I'm kind of playing the odds. And I mean, Chris said the whole cop out thing. I think all of us are kind of guilty of that this week with Mahomes because none of us are going to love him. Nobody's going to walk forward and say Mahomes is going to demolish Jacksonville. I mentioned it on yesterday's podcast. Over the last 20 games against Jacksonville, there have been just 2 quarterbacks who have scored more than 18 fantasy points. Nobody has scored more than 22. I mean, it's just this defense is remarkable. We saw Mahomes make plays outside the pocket last week against Denver with that crazy pass rush, and his offensive line didn't hold up very well against it. I think missing Sammy Watkins is the bigger thing here, which like as Chris said, Tyreek Hill will be double teamed. They're going to shade a safety his way the majority of the game. So Chris Conley's going to have to make plays. Travis Kelce's going to have to make plays. Jacksonville's been really, really good against tight ends too. So this is a really tough matchup. So
I can't wait to see it. This is the most exciting game of the year for me.
Yeah, and even if Mahomes goes out there and he throws for 250 yards and a touchdown or 2, I'd still walk away and be like, okay, that's fine. I have him as a borderline QB1. It just depends. If I had someone like Matthew Stafford, I would be starting Stafford over Mahomes this week.
Okay, yeah, I've got Stafford over Mahomes as well. And here's the thing. I don't see any streamers I would pick up over Mahomes. So if he's your starting quarterback, I mean, Chris, would you go with Andy Dalton against Miami, Blake Bortles at Kansas City, or would you just keep sticking with Mahomes?
Yeah, I think between Dalton and Bortles, I would go Mahomes. That's why I have him ranked anyway. Dalton would be closer for me. With Bortles, I get it. It's a terrible Kansas City defense, but unfortunately Bortles himself is kind of bad. And, of course, I saw what he could do against the Patriots.
You're being nice because I'm a Jags fan. He's not kind of bad. He's worse than that.
He's bad, and yet there's a big game out there for him. I get why some folks have rated Bortles as the number 5 quarterback this week. It's a bad Kansas City defense. If Mahomes does go bananas, you're going to have to score a bunch, and then the Patriots game plan is on the table. But the point would be that, that's not what Jacksonville wants to do.
Chris, I know this isn't going to change your mind whatsoever, but did you know Blake Bortles over the past 10 weeks has been the number 1 fantasy quarterback?
It didn't change your mind. I could hear you say it. I could hear you rolling your own eyes when you said it.
Oh, it's crazy, isn't it? That's a pretty big sample size. I don't know. I mean, I've got Bortles in my top 12. I like him a little bit better than Dalton as a streamer this week, but let's be honest, Dalton's owned in most leagues right now anyway.
Right. Well, I was going to say, that's a very selective range. It's funny that you didn't go 11 games. I wonder why that is. It's funny that you didn't go 9 games. I wonder why that is.
Actually, 9 games, it's still number 1 as well. You're exactly right, though.
Right, and the point would be it's been a little bit of a bumpy ride. There were a few good games in there. Some down moments too in that 10-week span.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, and you don't count the playoffs in there, which he was fine in the playoffs, but obviously they don't trust him, and there's a reason why. Now, Tags, Jared Goff was sensational last week. He's got extra rest, but the Seattle defense has been a lot better than I expected. They're going at Seattle, which is one of the most difficult places to play. Is Goff a start for you this week?
Yeah, he's a high floor QB1 for me. I think the Rams can do whatever they want to Seattle this week. Losing Earl Thomas was massive to that defense. He was the captain back there. He played well. He was a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year before hurting himself. So losing him is really going to hurt. And on top of that, they lost Michael Kendricks, their linebacker, because of the whole insider trading thing. They had him for a couple weeks. KJ Wright is still out of the lineup. They're saying it's going to be a few more weeks for him. This defense the Rams are going to be able to pick what they want to do. I don't know if they walk into Seattle and they say we're just going to pound Gurley. That's possible, but I still think there's enough for Goff to get into QB1 territory. So I have him ranked at number 9 right now.
Chris, is he a top 10 rest of the season quarterback for you? I know he's been amazing right now. I'm sure Mahomes is everyone's MVP, but I think Goff is probably number 2 at this point. Just absolutely carrying that team. I know they've got a lot of other stuff too, but he's been awesome. Is he someone that you start most weeks?
I'm sort of in the middle on this, and I have him higher than Mike does. So for this week, everything Mike says applies. That's correct, what you said, Tags. But I have him like 13 or 14 for the rest of the season because the volume just, generally speaking, isn't there. And maybe I'm hedging by saying, okay, I just saw what it looked like last week, so let's just play him. And then maybe I'll wind up amending my season-long, my season-long rank on him is kind of like worried there are lots of 25 pass attempt games out there the way there were. I mean, already this year, until the Minnesota game, he wasn't throwing all that much. And
that's my hesitation too.
Yeah, it comes down to volume. Let me ask you this, which offense do you guys think is most scary, sort of has the most staying power between the Chiefs and the Rams?
The Rams.
The Rams, yeah, because of McVay mostly.
I mean, honestly, me too. And yet, I'm willing to give Mahomes more of the benefit of the doubt in a season-long rank. Maybe just because bad defense, and I expect that's sort of what the Chiefs do. They just sort of want to throw, and I'm not sure I believe that about the Rams. But I'm with you. I think you guys are right that the Rams would be the offense I sort of trust that doesn't go away.
Mahomes runs the ball a little bit more too, which helps his fantasy stock. Plus, they've got Todd Gurley, which is going to help any offense a bit. And it's funny because I've got Goff outside my top 12 rest of the season as well. But this week I've got him number 10. And the reason why is a lot of these guys in the mid-range, like streamers most week, Kirk Cousins, Alex Smith, Carson Wentz, Russell Wilson, I don't love their matchups. And so I've got Goff ahead of them.
No, it's fair. I mean, Russell Wilson has been really bad, and I've actually kind of dove into this a little bit. So here's fun facts on Russell Wilson. In 2017, he was the QB 9 after 5 weeks. In 2016, he was the QB 23 after 8 weeks. So, I thought I remembered like owners basically saying that they were going to give up with Russell Wilson, and then towards the end of the year he starts turning things up. So maybe it's just like a thing with Russell Wilson where just at the beginning of the year he's not that great. Missing Doug Baldwin hasn't helped. It's really odd. I don't like Brian Schottenheimer.
You're not starting him against the Rams though, right? He's going to be under pressure every snap probably.
Yeah, no, he's a risk-reward QB2 for me this week. I mean, the volume should be there a little bit more. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball against the Rams, so I think there's going to be enough volume to suffice our QB2 numbers with some rushing totals, but I just don't like the play calling right now.
I'd rather play Andrew Luck against the Patriots, and I don't think he's going to throw 60 passes again, but he looked okay. What do you think, Chris? What did the film say about Luck?
A lot of similar stuff in the first half. He played bad in the first half of that game. It was right back. I mean, the reason they're losing is because, they fumble in the end zone, and then he gets sacked and gives up a 5-yard drive to give a big deficit. And then they kind of were forced to come out of the shell. Finally, Frank Reich was forced to come out of the shell, and I think what it proved was all this talk about the arm is, maybe it isn't the same as it was, but it's fine. It makes all the throws. He even got to throw his own Hail Mary at the end of the game at regulation. Unbelievable. So I think what the film showed was whatever Reich will ask Luck to do, he's capable of doing. And, I once again think there's a great chance that Brady can kind of... Well, here's the thing. I mean, the Colts are playing the most conservative defense in the league right now. The most cover 2, the most dropping linebackers, the middle of the field's wide open. Good on Deshaun Watson for taking advantage of it. That's why Kiki Cutie had a big game. Watson doesn't always do that. Watson doesn't always check down. So good on him. He had his best game of the year. But my God, if you play cover 2 like that against the Patriots,
yeah.
Julian Allen's going to have 100 catches. So I think Luck's going to have to throw a whole bunch on Thursday night.
I know we're not talking about wide receiver, but I want your take on what's going to happen. I mean, obviously Gordon's going to be in the lineup. Edelman's going to be there. Is it Philip Dorsett or Chris Hogan? I think Dorsett's been better. Just watching the tape, I've been impressed. I think he's taken a big step forward.
So, yes, he's definitely taken a big step forward. And I tell you what, I'm a Patriot fan, as you guys know. And
that's why I wanted to ask you.
Right, I watched that game live, but I also watched it on tape again and really paid attention to the receivers. There are times in that Dolphin game, first half, it's all we care about, when Chris Hogan's wide open, standing there jumping up and down, and Tom Brady's not even looking at him. It's almost the Jordy Nelson treatment from last year. I don't know what's going on. Not that I understand why, but all I can say is on film, I see Chris Hogan wide open and the ball never finding him last week. That's sort of alarming. I don't know what that's all even about. He's a stay away right now. I think Dorsett is probably a stay away until we see how this shakes out too, but certainly both are ownable. All are ownable. Josh Gordon didn't play very many snaps. I don't know how it all shakes out.
Yeah, he's someone I want to keep an eye on for sure. I mean, I'm not picking up Dorsett, but I think he's got a chance for some playing time. We'll move on to running back here in just a second. I've got 3 more guys to talk about, though, okay? Kirk Cousins at Philadelphia. Carson Wentz faced Minnesota. and tags Alex Smith at New Orleans. Now, you can use him as a streamer. If you own Cousins or Wentz, would you rather just stream Alex Smith or maybe even go deeper with like a Joe Flacco or Baker Mayfield? Or can you trust guys like Cousins or Wentz if you have to this week?
Alex Smith would be one I'd probably play over both of them. I'm concerned about Cousins, and the thing is like before I dove into this game a little bit, I really did think that the Vikings receivers could like mismatch with the Eagles cornerbacks in the way that they've been playing in the secondary. But looking a little bit closer, the Eagles have just been a different team at home and on the road. At home, they've played against Matt Ryan and Andrew Luck. They've only allowed a 55% completion rate, 5.0 yards per attempt, 11 fantasy points per game. On the road, a 75% completion rate, 9.8 yards per attempt, and 30 points per game. And then I was like, well, it's a very small sample size, right? Let me go back to last year. Last year, the Eagles allowed just 12.4 points per game. Like, not quarterback points per game. 12.4 points per game was the best in the NFL, and they allowed 24.6 on the road. So it was like double the points they allowed on the road. So there really is something to them playing at home. So I'm actually worried about this a little bit more. So, I mean, Cousins played against them last year. He did well when he was at home. He didn't play so well when he went to Philly. So I have him as like a high-end QB2. It wouldn't shock me to see him have a decent performance, but there are some warning signs here.
Last 3 weeks, 48 pass attempts, 55, 50. So, I mean, that's exciting. But, Chris, my problem with Cousins is when he's under pressure, he looks like a different quarterback. This offensive line is not protecting him, and Philadelphia is going to get after the passer. So I can't start him this week. I'd rather play Alex Smith. Are you with me, or would you rather go Cousins?
I have Cousins a couple of spots ahead of Smith, but I don't. So the home road thing, I just don't think stadiums are magical. So I think we can probably come up with other explanations. And it's not the same. To use Eagle numbers from last year is just not relevant to this year. It's Jalen Mills is playing like hot garbage.
He was hot garbage in like 2016 too. He was bad then.
Played well last year, but certainly not playing well this year. And so I go someone, I think it's Stephon Diggs, but someone gets Jalen Mills on him a fair amount of time, probably with some help, but there are plays to be made. But I think you guys both brought up great points. And the point that I would most be worried about from a Cousins perspective is when he's off schedule, we all just know he's not the same guy. It's the one thing that's lacking from his game when he's off schedule, especially late in halves and late in games. I mean, we saw it both at the end of the half and at the end of the game against the Rams. There's something missing and always has been. If you wanted to play it a little safer with Alex Smith, I would be okay with that. I would have said that I would have felt more okay before last week when the Saints defense did a really good job against the Giants. I mean,
they were who we expected them to be going into the season, right?
That's right. For 3 weeks, the Saints defense was disastrous, and they really have corner depth. Talk about a problem with a corner, like Jalen Mills would be great on the Saints, and they have a problem at safety, and yet it seems like that all kind of got fixed last week, and I don't think it's as easy a matchup for Alex Smith. Plus, I know you guys know it's an Adrian Peterson revenge game because so it's going to be. I'm just kidding. So no, you guys might have a really great point with Smith. There's probably less variability there, maybe a little less ceiling, but a little less variability.
He runs the ball too, which I like that for a floor for quarterback. Guys, let's move on over and talk about running backs. But first, I want to talk about one of the sponsors of today's show, Tommy John. So guys, I know underwear is not really fun to talk about, and let's be honest, underwear, like all of it sucks, and I just kind of thought it was something you had to deal with, like you have to wear uncomfortable underwear. That's not true. When it comes to comfort down below, there is underwear that's great. It's Tommy John, the revolutionary clothing brand that's redefined comfort for Americans everywhere, including me. Tommy John obsesses over every little detail and stitch by using fabrics that perform like nothing you have ever worn before. As a result, Tommy John's men's and women's underwear sport a no wedgie guarantee. Comfortable, stay-put waistbands and a range of fabrics that are feather light, moisture-wicking, breathable, and designed to move with you, not against you. That means there's no bunching and no riding up. Tommy John is so confident in their underwear that if you don't love your first pair, you can get a full refund with their best pair you'll ever wear or it's free guarantee. That includes their new life-changing women's underwear that sold out in just 6 weeks, which is now fully back in stock. Upgrade your underwear to Tommy John today. Hurry to TommyJohn.com/fantasypros for 20% off your first order. That's TommyJohn.com/fantasypros for 20% off. TommyJohn.com/fantasypros. All right, guys, on over to running backs. And somebody that I actually like this week is Derrick Henry at Buffalo. I mean, Buffalo had the one good week because Minnesota only ran the ball 6 times, but this defense, especially the front 7, is a disaster. I think Henry is going to get plenty of touches this week with the game script being how it probably is. You can't bank on that, but we're playing the odds here. Chris, I know Derrick Henry hasn't been getting a ton of work, but is he someone that you can use in the flex this week? I've got him as my RB27.
So, okay, that's not outrageous. If you'd said RB12, I'd been like, okay, come on. What are you smoking there, buddy?
Yeah, I would have fought myself.
I have him like 30, I can't remember, 31, 32, something like that. So it's the same neighborhood. Your intro was a little more optimistic on Derrick Henry than I personally feel deep down in my heart. He's played really badly.
Yeah.
That's the biggest problem is that, I get Trent Richardson vibes off of him, just sort of that floaty, like kind of parallel to the line of scrimmage. Maybe at some point I'll cut, but probably I'll just get my ankles tackled and I'll fall down. Man, I'll tell you what, like Deion Lewis just gives me so much more faith. When he's on the field, I just feel like the Titan offense has more of a chance. But you're right. I mean, Buffalo's not good. The Buffalo defense is actually pretty good, but Buffalo's not good, and who knows, this game gets out of control and Tennessee's winning by 50, and then you get a lot of Derrick Henry. I get that.
Yeah. Nutsags, we know Deion Lewis has been playing a lot more, but with this game script being in place, what we're expecting of the game script. Is Derrick Henry someone that you can trust? Or, I mean, if you're not playing him in this game, you might as well cut him, right?
That's exactly how I feel. That's exactly how I feel. I mean, we talked about not drafting him in the 3rd or 4th round like a lot of people were, but I have him in one league where he fell to the 7th round, and I'm like, all right, I'll take the shot here. I've had him on my bench the last couple of weeks, but I'm playing him this week. The reason is, so the Titans' offensive line, Taylor Lewan was hurt for a little bit. Jack Conklin, they finally got him back this week, so now their offensive line is healthy. The defense is playing phenomenal. The Bills are not going to score many points against them unless Mariota turns the ball over. But I think this is a game, it's kind of like what the Bears did with Mitch Trubisky against the Bucs and getting his confidence up before their bye week. I think it was like a get-right game for him. It's a get-right game for this run game. They know that they need to be able to run the ball if they're going to go anywhere this season. I know Bobby expects them to win that division, but if they plan on doing that, they're going to need to run the ball a lot better than they have. The Bills have allowed 22 running back touchdowns in their last 13 games.
That is absurd. 22?
Yeah, 22 total running back touchdowns, including 7 this year. So, I mean, if there's any week that you're going to play Derrick Henry and feel pretty confident about it, it's this one. And I'm with you though, Chris. Like, he has looked very sluggish. He's moving very slow behind the line of scrimmage, and he hasn't really hit that cut to get upfield. And that's when he usually does his damage, in those longer plays. So I think we should hit at least one of those big cuts this week and find himself into the end zone, because if they don't do it here, they're never going to.
Or I remember face the Jags last year. He just ran through a wide open hole. And he's pretty fast.
Once he gets upfield, once he cuts upfield, he can go.
Yeah, once he gets going, and so maybe he'll break one of these big runs when the game doesn't matter anymore, because that's what Derrick Henry did last year. Otherwise, he was horrible. At least he's not Alex Collins, though, because when I watch Alex Collins, he's like, I'm going to run 15 yards directly to my left, and then I'll try to turn it upfield when everybody knows that I'm going to, and I'm too slow to get past anybody, and he's fumbling the ball all over the place. I'm super worried about him. And Lamar Miller, what is going on with these two guys, Chris? Like, can we actually trust them? Lamar Miller faced Dallas, Alex Collins at Cleveland.
In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Like, at some point, I'm run out of RB2s. I don't know who to rate above them.
I know.
I don't like Alex Collins at all. I thought he was ridiculously overdrafted. People drafting a roster-shaped hole rather than the actual player himself. I don't know if you guys know this, but
I like the way you put that, yeah.
He's an Irish dancer. I'm not sure if you guys ever heard. It's an obscure fact that I uncovered myself, that he does Irish dancing.
He actually does?
Yeah, it's a real thing. So, like, I don't like him, but I don't know how I get away from using him if he's my RB2.
Well, I'd rather play Adrian Peterson against New Orleans. I'd rather play Aaron Jones at Detroit, even with not knowing his touches, just because I think Jones could have a big game. I don't see Alex Collins doing that.
What you're getting is some work and a touchdown, maybe, with Alex Collins. And with Jones, you go, am I even getting work? But Jones is a superior player to Alex Collins, so who am I to say that you're wrong on that?
Well, and Detroit is just an awful run defense.
Wide receiver 3 is a total cluster because there's 60 guys who could be a wide receiver 3. RB2 is a total cluster because there's 2 guys who should be an RB2.
That's a good way to put it. So what's your take on Lamar Miller? Because he was losing touches to Alfred Blue last week.
Yeah, I think he might have been a little bit banged up, and Alfred Blue made a couple of big mistakes at the end of that game where I just go, that's Alfred Blue.
Like, if only Foreman had been healthy this year, right?
Yeah, I mean, and he's on the PUP, and the Achilles injury was a long time ago. We might see him in the second half of the year. I have him stashed.
I don't know if you recover from that, though.
It's true. You're not sure. But, I mean, I don't think Lamar Miller's terrible at football. He's just sort of, in a normal year, he'd be RB 26, and nobody would be complaining about him because you wouldn't have expected much of him. But in this year, you go, oh, God, is he really RB, 18?
Or if he had a halfway competent offensive line, which he does not.
Yeah, but he's run out of excuses. Year after year after year with Lamar Miller, you just go. I've had to fight it off from way before in the ESPN days. Like, why aren't the Dolphins giving him a full workload 4 years in a row? Gee, I don't know if it's the same coaching. It's a bunch of different coaching staffs, but 4 years in a row, that should tell you something. That maybe he's not the guy. Like, this sprinter that we were sold was never really a breakaway player. I just think not really a great football instincts.
And Tex, we've got two different types of players here, Royce Freeman and Nyheim Hines. They're both going on the road against an AFC East team. Freeman gets the Jets, Hines gets the Patriots. If you had to choose between these two, which one do you like the best? And do you think both of them are startable?
Is it a PPR league?
Well, let's just say half PPR.
I'm probably going to go with Hines.
That would have been my question too. Sorry.
Yeah.
100% that would have been my question.
Yeah, I don't feel great about Royce Freeman because he's obviously not getting too much work. He's in a timeshare with Phillip Lindsay. The matchup against the Jets, it's not bad, but it's also not great. I know Carlos Hyde scored a couple touchdowns against them, but that defense just broke down in the second half of that game. So, I mean, Royce Freeman, if he doesn't get in the end zone, he's going to let you down. Whereas Nyheim Hines at least presents a floor, and he could also get into the end zone in this matchup against New England because there's going to be plenty of garbage time, knowing that
He's got 29 touches in the last 3 weeks, Royce Freeman.
Yeah, well, that's not great for a running back. I mean, and that's what I'm saying. Drake is getting up to the point where, what did he have? 9 targets last week? And knowing that T.Y. Hilton's out, knowing that Jack Doyle is out, he needs some targets. And this Patriot defense is probably one to allow him. So they'll be more than willing to give the underneath stuff up to Hines. So I have him as I would say him over Freeman, but if it was standard, I'd probably consider Freeman, though, because I just think he's got a better shot at the touchdown.
I've been really impressed with Freeman. I mean, I like Lindsay even more, so I'm not saying Freeman's going to steal the job or anything, but I think both these two can be useful. I just wish he'd get more touches, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, people are trying to make every national TV game that has a run that the result is good, my Twitter lights up with he's Saquon Barkley. I mean, he's Saquon Barkley.
Obviously.
Right? I mean, did you see that cut that Royce Freeman made on that touchdown? I'm like, when you cut into air, it's not that great of a cut. They all can stop at some point, right? What Royce Freeman does is run over guys. He's a really good power back. I've been calling him bigger C.J. Anderson. That's good. Being bigger C.J. Anderson is a good thing. You can be a good player for sure. Why can't we have nice things? Why can't we be bigger C.J. Anderson's a nice thing to have found. Probably he's not a great player, but he's a pretty darn good one. But no, everybody's got to turn him into the greatest player they've ever seen. And he's fine, but I'm not outraged that Phillip Lindsay plays because it's obvious they're total stylistic complements for one another. So why wouldn't the Broncos do that?
I like what the Broncos have going on right now. And if they would have had different play calling, they would be tied for first place in that division. I think they're a playoff team this year. Now, you mentioned Barkley. Obviously, everyone is starting him. But watching the film, I can't help but think he is the single best running back in the world. Has that been your takeaway too?
I mean, Todd Gurley's awfully good, and
the offense. I mean, if Barkley was in the Rams' offense, I think he'd be doing more.
I'm not going to say a single bad word about Barkley. He's in the conversation. I mean, he's as quick and as fast as you. He looks like Alvin Kamara, and then you go, oh wait, but he's 20 pounds heavier than. Is it even maybe 30 pounds heavier than Alvin Kamara? Just to be able to move like that and to be that big. I know that draft pick gets ragged on, and maybe the team in the Giants' position with Eli at quarterback shouldn't have done it, but I don't think we're going to look back on his career and say that it was bad.
Yep, agree with that. Okay, guys, a couple more. Let's go to 2 pass-catching backs. Bilal Powell faced Denver. Austin Ekeler at Oakland. Chris, if you have to decide between these two, which way are you going?
I'll go Ekeler by a little bit, just by dint of... He's probably a little better player. They're real similar players, to be honest. And, maybe a little bit better team, maybe a little bit easier matchup. And he's had just a little more success on a per play basis. But, you're at that point, you're outside the top 30 running backs and you're just throwing a dart.
Yeah, I think these two are so close. I don't know why I asked you which one you would take. But, Tex, do you think both these guys are startable in half PPR?
It depends on who's your roster. But the thing is, I have them both outside the top 36 right now.
If you're desperate, yeah, I don't want to use these guys. If you're using them, your team is bad.
Yeah, I mean, I'd honestly prefer Ekeler. The matchup's better. He plays in a better offense. That's why I would lean Ekeler. I mean, the touch ratio, I've actually found that quite odd this year. Ekeler last year was a 4.6 to 1 ratio in terms of like Gordon touches to Ekeler. This year it's 1.9 to 1. So he's getting a lot more touches. It's in between 7 and 14 touches every single week. So in a good matchup against Oakland, I'm fine using him like over Bilal Powell right now.
I was that fool thinking it was going to be Justin Jackson too. Eckler's a good player.
Yeah, no, he's played well.
You guys talk about Austin Ekeler, future New England Patriot.
Oh,
that's a perfect fit right there,
Chris. Wow, that sounds awesome.
Well, Tom Brady's going to be gone, so the offense is probably going to look a little bit different.
Right.
What are they going to do at quarterback when Tom Brady leaves, Chris? Like, what are you hoping for at least?
Throw up?
I don't know. I don't think there's no solution right now, obviously.
You don't want to think about it?
He's not on the roster.
Yeah, he's not on the roster. Yeah, there's some dude, and they're not going to be, I don't know if you know this, newsflash, they're not going to be as good.
Nope.
Yeah, I think that you're right, man. All right, guys, a couple more running backs to talk about here. All right, guys, Alfred Morris is going up against this Arizona defense that is really easy to pick on, at least for running backs. Tags, do you have him in your top 30?
I do not. He played just 14 snaps last week, and the snap counts have gone from 35, 31, 23, and now 14 last week. And it's weird because they actually led for a portion of that game against the Chargers. So, the Cardinals have been pretty brutal against running backs, but I still think they're trying to figure things out under Steve Wilks. It hasn't looked pretty just yet. They're moving around linebackers, and Budda Baker's playing out of position, and there's just a lot of issues with Arizona right now, but I do think that their defense is better than they've showed so far. Breida is the running back to own there, and I think Alfred Morris is honestly droppable at this point.
Wow, okay. Yeah, I've got Breida in my top 20. We know that Beathard throws the ball to running backs quite a bit. I think he's a must-start. James White is a must-start. I mean, obviously, unless you're one of these teams that's got like 3 dominant guys. But I've got them both. Breida in my top. I've got him 16. I've got James White 15. Chris Thompson 17. Chris, do you agree that all 3 of those guys are top 20?
I don't quite have Chris Thompson there, because I think Adrian Peterson's played legitimately really well, and I almost don't, I guess if you're down by 3 touchdowns, you're not going to see as much Peterson, but I think under most circumstances, Peterson's really the lead back there. There was, of the 3 games for Washington, there was one where it got out of control, and Peterson played less and badly, and it got stuffed a lot, but even in the stuffage game, I thought Peterson was really good, and I came into the year just saying no chance.
He looks awesome, doesn't he?
It's not just numbers too. He looks awesome. He's looked like one of the top 10 running backs in the league.
I agree, man. That is so funny to say.
It's weird. And so I guess that's a little bit of just a tiny bit of injection of worry for Thompson. I agree with you guys on James White, but he's going to do it to you again. He's going to do it to you again. He's going to have a 4-touch game here. It's just going to happen because that's who he is.
With Gronk out, though, I think Gronk's going to miss this game. So it's like, I don't know if that happens this week, but I'm with you.
And plus, Michelle touched the ball so much 4 days ago that I wouldn't be surprised if he gets like 11 touches, and James White, they just feed him like crazy.
I mean, they fed James White James White had 8 carries. That's like lifetime high 8 carries last week.
All right, Chris. Well, that's all. Thank you so much for coming on. And make sure to check out Chris's film review. It's youtube.com/HarrisFootball. And also, he's got a new book out. Check it out. It's called Tulsa. His last book was awesome. I can't wait to read this. Hope it's just as good. You can find it on Amazon. Again, Christopher Harris on Amazon. It's called Tulsa. In Tags with the News, we already talked about one of these guys, Ryan Grant, who we both think is startable because he's got a safe floor. Let's talk about some other players. Tyler Boyd, I've actually got him in my top 20 this week, Tags.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people who definitely like Boyd this week. I mean, I'm a little bit more, I think, hesitant than most people against the Dolphins. So there's an injury that will affect my ranking of him this week. So I still have him as I think I have him as a top 30 wide receiver right now. But Rashad Jones has been out for the Dolphins the last couple weeks, and that's really affected their slot coverage because they've been forced to move Minkah Fitzpatrick to safety, and he's kind of like a do-it-all player, but Minkah Fitzpatrick has been awesome in the slot. So if Rashad Jones does come back for this game, Fitzpatrick has allowed just 40 yards in his coverage on 15 targets. A 25.7 quarterback rating, which is the lowest in the NFL among those who cover the slot. The next closest is 50.3. So it's ridiculous how good he's been in the slot. And Boyd, I don't think Boyd's like a phenomenal athlete and one that's like a game changer. He's just been seeing a ton of targets and he's been playing well with those targets. But I think the matchup here is tough if Fitzpatrick will be matched up.
I agree. I'd move him out of my top 30 if that was the case, but it's, Xavier Howard's going to be on A.J. Green. Assuming Jones is out, I think Boyd is going to eat again.
Yeah, if Jones is out and Fitzpatrick has to play the safety position again, I would definitely think that Boyd's going to be a top 24 play.
Okay. What about Corey Davis? Do you start him against Tre'Davious White?
Ugh.
It makes me so nervous. I mean, he's probably going to get 20,000 targets again, but I don't want to mess with Tre'Davious White.
That's what I'm saying. Like I mentioned earlier in the show, talking about the Titans getting their run game going. I really think they're going to prioritize that this week, and I don't think that Marcus Mariota throws the ball a whole lot. Tre'Davious White, he shadowed both Devontae Adams and Stephon Diggs the last 2 weeks, holding them to a combined 12 catches for 98 scoreless yards on 24 targets. So it wasn't like the targets weren't there for those receivers. So me personally, Corey Davis is he's an iffy wide receiver 3. I mean, I still think he gets 7-8 targets in this game, but it's probably not going to be a great week to have him. If you're looking for someone who could potentially win you your fantasy week, I don't think Davis is that guy.
I've got him number 16 rest of the season. This week I've got him at 29, so I don't feel great about him. Obviously, if he's your third best on my rankings, you start him, but hopefully you will be able to find 3 better guys.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that's the thing. He's still in my top 30, but I don't feel great about it though.
A couple guys that are must starts for me. I already mentioned that I like Blake Bortles this week, Dede Westbrook, and Keelan Cole.
I like Keelan Cole a lot. I do not like Dede Westbrook because Dede Westbrook's matchup is pretty brutal. It's not very good. So I mentioned this, I don't know if it was yesterday's show, but basically talking about Westbrook and that Kendall Fuller is the cornerback that Kansas City got in the Alex Smith trade, and he was a slot corner for Washington, and he was one of the better slot cornerbacks in football last year. When the Chiefs are facing a 2 wide receiver set, they'll have Fuller on the perimeter, but they move him into the slot once they go 3 wide, and then they bring Orlando Scandrick in to cover the perimeter, which means Dede Westbrook, whenever he comes in the field as the third wide receiver, he's clearly the number 3 behind Moncrief and Cole. He's going to match up with Fuller, and it's just not a great matchup for him. So me personally, I think Keelan Cole has the best matchup here, and he's the one I would prefer to play.
Now, we mentioned Corey Davis does not have a good matchup. Somebody else who has a horrible matchup is Amari Cooper. He has been dominated by Hayward in the past.
So I've seen people throwing this out, the whole shadowing Amari Cooper and how Casey Hayward is done. So Amari Cooper saw 6 targets in each of the games they played last year. Nobody's going to do anything with 6 targets against Casey Hayward, who's a tough matchup, with 6 targets. So, I mean, Amari Cooper did have over 100 yards and a touchdown in one of those games, but it wasn't, I'm putting up air quotes, in Casey Hayward's coverage. If you guys have watched the Chargers this year, you understand that this is not the same secondary because they're not getting a pass rush. Knowing that Derek Carr has time, knowing that like last year he didn't have as much time. The right tackle situation was ugly. Donald Penn was trending downward. I just feel like people are comparing last year, and I don't think it's fair to do. Casey Hayward's a good cornerback. Amari Cooper is a better wide receiver. And knowing that Amari Cooper's still hit or miss. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Amari Cooper is you have to play him every single week. It's going to be difficult to predict, but I'm not worried about Casey Hayward. If you've watched him this year, Casey Hayward has not been the same cornerback this year. He would not even be close to making the Pro Bowl if the season ended today. And it's because the pass rush is not getting there. So if Amari Cooper has time to run his routes, I still believe that he's a better wide receiver than Casey Hayward is a corner.
What about Alshon Jeffery going up against Minnesota? I know they haven't been as good as everyone expected, but they've still got some weapons there in their secondary.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Xavier Rhodes is still really freaking good. Now he's a bigger corner. He's a physical guy, and that's why him and Jeffrey are going to match up. That's hands down that matchup is happening. But we saw if a quarterback is willing to throw it up to his receiver in one-on-one situations, they can win those. And that's why Marvin Jones, he scored 2 touchdowns against Rhodes last year. I think it was on Thanksgiving, that game that happened, and nobody wanted to play Marvin Jones that week, I remember, because Rhodes has been so good. And Rhodes really has been that good. It's just, every now and then if you have a quarterback who's willing to throw it up, which Carson Wentz is, and knowing that Nelson Aguilar has 3 drops over the last 2 weeks, I think Jeffrey is going to continue to be that favorite target for him, even in a tough matchup. I have him as my wide receiver 24. I don't think he's a guy that you want to play in DFS or anything like that, but he does get enough targets, and Wentz he was actually the quarterback last year who threw into tight coverage more than any other quarterback in the NFL. So he's not scared of tight coverage. So Jeffrey can win jump ball situations.
Okay, I've got 2 groups of 3 players, and you can give me your top wide receiver from each of them.
All right.
Kenny Stills at Cincinnati, Mike Williams face Oakland, Sterling Shepard at Carolina.
Kenny Stills.
I like all three of these guys. Yeah, I've got Stills just ahead of them.
So I'm hoping that Devontae Parker is back this week because Parker would probably draw William Jackson in coverage, leaving Stills with Drake Kirkpatrick, who is like on the downturn of his career. He hasn't been nearly as good without Adam Jones there. That duo has allowed 5 touchdowns in their coverage, and they've allowed at least one 15 PPR point receiver in every game. So if we're looking at the Dolphins and trying to figure out who that is, I think Stills is that guy. So I would say I have him right now as my wide receiver 30 this week.
I think he's a lot safer than Mike Williams. And for my wide receiver 3, I prefer to start somebody safer. Williams is kind of a touchdown or bust guy. Maybe he could have a huge game. Who knows? But Oakland's a defense that you can pick on. I just don't know if I'm willing to trust Mike Williams as a wide receiver 3 every week. I think he's more of a flex play.
Yeah, Oakland has been, like, their corners have been better than everybody thought. Like, Rashawn Melvin played really freaking good for the Colts last year, so that doesn't really surprise me that much. But Garyon Conley has been really good, too. He was a first-round pick last year. He didn't get on the field, but he's been good. They're getting back Darrell Worley this week from suspension, so he's probably going to cover the slot. So Mike Williams' matchup isn't as great as you would have thought, but, again, like, this dude, he caught a touchdown over Marcus Peters, like, Phillip Rivers is on fire right now. He's playing really well. So I have Williams as my number 36 wide receiver this week. I would have trouble deciding between him and like someone like Devin Funchess, who's going to match up with Janoris Jenkins. It's just a brutal matchup.
Nah, I would prefer not to play him. Somebody else I'd prefer not to play, Quincy Enunwa. I know he's getting a lot of snaps, but come on, against Denver, I don't know, Tags.
Yeah, Chris Harris Jr. is really freaking good. I still say that he's the best slot cornerback in the game. Like, his game is trending down just a little bit. He's getting older. That's going to happen. But Quincy Enunwa is still seeing a fair target share. But I think this is like a chance for the Jets to take some shots downfield to Robbie Anderson. If they can protect Sam Darnold enough, for that to happen, because that Denver pass rush is pretty nasty.
All right, the next 3 here, Larry Fitzgerald at San Francisco. What do we do with him? Geronimo Allison at Denver, opposite of Devontae Adams being covered probably by Darius Slay. And then Michael Crabtree at Cleveland.
Crabtree is now he's like my number 40 wide receiver. I'm not playing him until he gives me a reason to play him.
He's leading the team in targets.
He's not doing anything with him. Like he has, I think it's 5 drops in the season. He's at close to a 20% drop rate on his targets, whereas the next closest receiver is like 11% or something like that. It's something crazy.
I think Willie Snead is the better wide receiver.
Willie Snead has more yards than Crabtree does right now, and he actually has more fantasy points. So it's not crazy to say that. I'm guessing Crabtree will probably face Denzel Ward in coverage a lot, so that's a tough matchup to begin with. I would play Allison as long as he gets cleared from the concussion. Allison, I mean, the dude he's played so well, and Matt Patricia and Lions defenders, I've heard them talk about it. I've heard them talk about what we're going to do is we're going to take away the top target of the opposing offense, kind of like the Patriots do, taking away that number 1 option. And that's clearly Devontae Adams. So do they say we're going to put Darius Slay and we're going to bring a safety and shade him his way? That means Allison's going to see man coverage against Nevin Lawson, who he's a fine cornerback, but he's still like just an average guy, where Aaron Rodgers can take care. He can take advantage of those matchups.
I've got Allison all the way up at wide receiver 25 this week. I'd rather play him than Corey Davis.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't argue with someone telling me they wanted to do that. I don't have it ranked that way right now. I have Allison at 33, but some of that is me teetering on the fact is he going to play the concussion, and does that factor into their game plan? I don't know. It seems like Randall Cobb might be out again. There's just a whole lot of ifs with this Green Bay offense right now, so I'm kind of approaching with caution, but I still think he's a decent play if he's on the field. 3
other guys that I think are startable, Tags, and I want your opinion. Tywan Taylor at Buffalo, because Corey Davis, again, is going to be on Tre'Davious White. Kiki QT with Will Fuller probably out. Either way, I think I want to play QT against Dallas because he had 15 targets last week. And then Mohamed Sanu at Pittsburgh, because we know that's going to be a shootout.
Oh, I'm playing Sanu. I like QT this week as well, and I don't think Will Fuller plays. I think that they're going to rest him up because Bill O'Brien came out and said that it was not precautionary, that he did suffer a hamstring injury, and they'll see how he does in practice. But he said that there's no way that Fuller could have run every route that they wanted him to, and when that happens, they're going to bench him. They've done that before. Knowing it's his second soft tissue injury of the year, they're playing it safe with him. That's how I feel. Mohamed Sanu, everybody wants to talk about Julio and Ridley, but Sanu now has 16 targets over the last 2 games. He's caught 10 passes for 147 yards and a touchdown. And the Steelers last week were without Mike Hilton, their up-and-coming slot cornerback, and they were forced to go to Cameron Sutton, who's been horrible. Like, on 17 targets, he's allowed 3 touchdowns and 210 yards. So, this game has shootout potential all over it. If Hilton does play, I would lower Sanu just a little bit, but I still think Sanu is a good play.
Let's go lightning round here just really quick. Doug Baldwin faced the Los Angeles Rams. Start or sit?
Start.
Start for me as well. Okay, Dante Moncrief at Kansas City.
Sit.
Sit. Yep, me too. Nelson Aguilar face Minnesota.
That's like on the fence. He's like, it depends on who you have on your roster. I mean, I guess I'll say start.
I'm sitting him. Josh Gordon face Indianapolis.
He only played 18 snaps last week, but if Gronk is out, I mean, I would imagine they need someone. I'm saying sit just because he's at number 50 in my rankings. But he's like that ultimate risk reward player. Like if you're looking for someone with upside, put him in. If you want to play someone boring that's probably going to give you some decent production, put in someone like Nelson Aguilar.
By the way, can we trade for him? Like, I want to buy low on Josh Gordon so bad right now because I've got him a wide receiver 2 rest of the season. And I think right now everyone's like, I don't know. He wasn't very good in the first game. Not everyone, but a lot of Josh Gordon owners are probably thinking that. So I bet you could get him for cheap right now.
I'd buy him cheap.
Yeah. Jameson Crowder at New Orleans.
Start. Oh,
okay. I don't have him as start. Well, I've got him 44, so I guess you could start him in the flex.
I have him 34.
34, okay. Jordy Nelson at the Chargers.
Depends on who you have. I don't mind Jordy, actually. Like, I have him as, I think he's a start, actually.
All right, 3 more. Chris Hogan, Julian Edelman at the Colts.
Edelman's absolute start. Like, he's a must play. Hogan, I'm not as low on Hogan as some people are. Chris talked about the fact that it's not Hogan's play necessarily, and I think he's going to benefit from Edelman being there. I just don't know how much they need to throw in this game. So I have Hogan like in that wide receiver 4 range. So it just depends. I would start Hogan over someone like D.D. Westbrook or Larry Fitzgerald.
Okay, and the last guy, Tyler Lockett, faced the Rams.
I think he's a sit for me.
Me too.
He's going to see Marcus Peters the most. I mean, if they continue to run the offense that they have, he's gone back on the perimeter with Doug Baldwin back.
All right, let's move on over to tight end, and it is the same as most weeks where it's obvious. You start Reed, Ertz, Kelsey, Gronk, Jared Cook, which is kind of weird to say, Jimmy Graham. After that, though, it gets a little bit questionable, and I've got Vance McDonald in my top 10 against Atlanta. Do you?
He's my number 8. Cool. I like Vance McDonald, man. Like, I think that people, like, some people are worried about Jesse James and like, I don't know, Jesse James was so good. The last 2 weeks, 58 routes for McDonald, just 28 for James. Roethlisberger's struggling with the deep ball. Get the ball to Vance McDonald, let him run over people.
Ebron's a start, George Kittle's a start, Rudolph's a start. If you've got any of these guys, you know. You're not streaming somebody over them. I think David Njoku is the same way. I know he hasn't been great, really. He's dropped a lot of passes, but Baker Mayfield's been throwing the ball a lot more. He's a big-time red zone threat. I'm starting Njoku every single week. Are you with me, Tags?
Yeah, Njoku is someone that I'm still waiting to break out, and I think this could potentially be the week. I mean, the Ravens cornerbacks are going to remove Callaway and Higgins almost completely. Jarvis Landry doesn't have an easy matchup. They have Jimmy Smith coming back this week, so the wide receivers aren't going to be able to do much. So I think Njoku is the one that I think they should look to doing something, as well as Duke Johnson. I mean, we know they're not using Duke Johnson, though, so Njoku is he's a top 10 play for me as well.
I like him, too. My only other guy in the top 12 is Benjamin Watson. I don't feel great about playing him, but again, I think this is going to be a shootout, and it's at home. Watson's quality. He actually looks good. He doesn't look like an old fart, and Drew Brees is my number 1 quarterback this week. So I can play Watson. I don't feel good about it, though.
Yeah, I'm usually like anti-Austin Hooper, but I think he's someone that you should look at this week. Pittsburgh defense has really been struggling against tight ends this year. Over the last 3 weeks, they've allowed 26 receptions, 314 yards, and 3 touchdowns to tight ends alone. Morgan Burnett, if he comes back, we want to downgrade Hooper because Morgan Burnett is actually pretty good, and he's going to cover Hooper the majority of the time. So one other streamer I do want to mention, though, is Nick Vannett.
Me too, man. Yeah, I've got him 13.
Yeah, that's exactly where I have him. So Vannett, over the next 2 weeks, it's going to be his show. Like, this is his chance to do whatever he can, he's going to do, because Ed Dixon can't come back until week 7. Will Dissly is now on the IR. And if you look at it, Dissly and Vannett have combined for 28 targets the first 4 games, which would rank 5th among tight ends. That's obviously, there's a large portion of the pie there to be had. And the last tight end they have on the roster is Darrell Daniels. He's a 3rd-string tight end who's caught 3 passes in his career. So
he's an offensive lineman, too.
Exactly, and the Rams have struggled with tight ends, so I think Nick Vannett is definitely on the streaming radar this week.
All right, DST, we'll go a little quicker here. Just, where do you have them ranked? Obviously, Tennessee is a streamer, so we don't even need to talk about them. They're the ECR number 1.
Yeah.
Carolina, though.
Carolina, yeah, against the Giants, I would definitely consider that. I mean, it's in Carolina. Eli hasn't thrown, he's only thrown, I think, one interception this year, but he hasn't taken many chances. He has been sacked. That Carolina front does bring the pressure. So I do like Carolina. I have them as my number 3 defense this week. I think the Jets are another team that could be considered. The Broncos' run game is solid, and they've been run blocking very well, but the pass blocking hasn't been great, and Case Keenum's been terrible.
He's going to lose his job to Chad Kelly, man.
I think it's possible. Like, he has looked bad the last couple weeks, and like it's just not there, man. He stands there in the face of pressure, but he's missing some throws that he needs to make. And the Jets defense, again, that's a very young defense. They're going to get better as time goes on. Jamal Adams is a monster. Like, that dude is just, I love watching him play football. That's definitely one. But the Bengals are another one I would think about because they're getting Vontaze Burfict back this week. That's obviously huge for their defense. Playing against the Dolphins, who, I mean, they're the Dolphins offense.
They're 3-1, man. Yeah, I know.
I mean, if someone wants to bet me on this one, like I'll bet that the Dolphins don't make the playoffs, that they don't finish with 7 wins.
7 wins. So I think they might get to 7.
They would need 4 the rest of the year. I mean, it's
yeah. They play the Bills a couple times, man.
That's gonna be fun.
Yeah. I've got the Jets number 7. I've got the Bengals number 9. I've got the Arizona Cardinals against Bethard number 8. The Patriots, Chargers, Rams, Ravens. You can play them almost every week. Same with the Texans. And then the Cowboys round out my top 12 against Houston's offensive line.
Yeah, I think the Cardinals are a good call. I have Dallas there too, because like Dallas, like you could at least count on some sacks with Deshaun Watson. Their secondary has been really hit or miss. Leighton Vander Esch looked pretty good last week. They're going to struggle against the run at times without Sean Lee in the lineup, but Houston hasn't been able to exploit any of that. It's just like I said, their offensive line is just, it's crap. And it's going to allow a few sacks, so you'll get a floor with the Cowboys, but the Cardinals are starting to figure things out a little bit, and Bethard, he's CJ Bethard. He's a backup quarterback, and his receiving options are very limited right now, so I don't think the Cardinals are a bad last-ditch option.
I think a last-ditch option is the San Francisco 49ers if you need somebody. Going up against Josh Rosen, who doesn't look impressive. Again, that offensive line is terrible. 49ers can get after the quarterback a little bit. Wouldn't be surprised if they get a few turnovers. I would actually play them over the Eagles against Minnesota or Minnesota against the Eagles. Tags, I don't have the Jags in my top 12. I don't think you can play them against Kansas City. Mahomes hasn't turned the ball over once.
Yeah, I have the Jags at 15 right now.
Me too.
It feels really weird. I'm probably going to move them to like 14 just because
I might move them up to number 1 just because they're incredible.
They are incredible, but yeah, I mean, Kansas City's offensive line didn't look great against Denver last week, so I mean, Mahomes, he looked great on the run, but the thing is, if you do that to your quarterback enough, they're going to start turning the ball over. They're putting a lot on the cornerbacks this week. Like, if they can hang with Tyreek Hill, they'll win this game. So like, I can't wait to watch that game, to be honest with you.
Yeah. All right, man. That's all for today's show. Tags, that was a lot of fun, buddy.
Woohoo! A lot of football talk today.
Yep. Go finish up that primer, bud.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to work on right now.
All right, guys. And remember, we're giving away that signed Michael Thomas jersey. You can go to fantasypros.com/jersey-giveaway to sign up. It takes about 30 seconds to do. And thanks to the sponsors of today's show, Tommy John, where you can get 20% off your first order by going to TommyJohn.com/fantasypros. Again, that's TommyJohn.com/fantasypros. And thanks also to FanDuel. Remember, get some entries in for their World Fantasy Football Championships. You can go to that live final, get your crack at $500,000 top prize. You can compete with me. Hopefully, I will be there. That would be a lot of fun. For Mike Tagliere, I'm Bobby Sylvester. Thanks for listening. Enjoy your football.
I just wanted you to watch me dissolve.